Oh, happy Tuesday. Welcome back into another edition of Prime Sports Worlds. We're bringing you a double dose of Prime Sports World today. And on the second of today's episodes, we're going to talk about the Houston Texans season preview, as they are definitely in a new regime there for the Houston Texans. New quarterback, new head coach, new era there for Houston Texans football. In case you missed the first episode, we talked about the Denver Nuggets and then winning the Larry O'Brien Trophy. That's on our Facebook, YouTube tape, and our Twitch stream. So go check that out. Please like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. I'm David Huppin, right there, my co-host, Mr. TJ Hopkins, and TJ Houston as we move into the AFC South. Just thoughts before we get into some storylines for Houston.
Well, obviously, you're year two. Year two after the Deshaun Watson saga, and you're still trying to escape that. I think you did about as well as you could with all that, looming over the whole. Well, is this year two or year three?
This is so he hasn't played in 3 seasons, but this is year 2. This will be the second. This will be the second season. He was no longer a part of the roster, so he didn't play in 2020 or 2021, and then he was traded last offseason. This will be the second full season where he's no longer part of the team. The third full season where he hasn't played a meaningful snap.
Right. So, and obviously you had a shot at what was it? Keeping the Bears out of getting the first overall pick, but we thank you for that.
We thank you, Lovie Smith, baby. Let's go. His last parting gift to Chicago. Let's just jump right into the storylines. First one, year 1, DeMeco Ryans obviously was the defensive coordinator there for the San Francisco 49ers, comes to Houston, brings a lot of his own guys back with him, Jimmy Ward, a couple other guys, but their names are escaping me right now. But Jimmy Ward for sure. Like, what are we expecting year 1, DeMeco Ryans, expectations for the Houston Texans? Hopefully not for him to get fired after 1 season, because that's what they've done the last 2 guys. David Culley got fired after 1 season. Lovie Smith got fired after 1 season. With DeMeco Ryans, 5-year contract. He comes from that Kyle Shanahan tree. He is a former Houston Texan. What are we expecting from DeMeco Ryans as the head coach of this team?
I want to say discipline. I think one of the things that that constantly plagues bad football teams are dumb things, bad penalties, unfortunate penalties, undisciplined plays, undisciplined altogether, blowing coverages, blowing assignments, stuff like that. You give a guy like DeMeco Ryans this length of a deal because you have to understand that this is a process. Like you don't go from bottom feeder to Super Bowl champion in 1 season. It doesn't work like that. And you can't you can't afford to fire DeMeco Ryans after 1 season. Because do you know what they're gonna say about your franchise if you fired 3 minority head coaches in a row after 1 season? You know what they're gonna say?
I also think you'll have a hard time getting people to even apply for those jobs in general. So, yeah, I think that DeMeco Ryans, he's going to instill discipline. I also think he's going to improve this defense a big time around. And we'll get into when we get to the free agency. But they've brought some free agents here that should improve this defense pretty drastically from year 1, from last season to what they are going to be probably hopefully this season. Yeah, I think he instills some confidence. I mean, you go from a guy who went from San Francisco, who, not the greatest quarterback play there, and they still won a lot of games because they were elite on defense. This also seems to be a head coach that the team believes in already. Like, they seem to be behind him. It was like they kind of just it always felt like when John Culley and Lovie Smith both got hired the last 2 seasons, it just kind of felt like, well, there's nobody else left. Like, we'll just bring these guys in. And they were never really the solution there for the Houston Texans at the head coaching position. That doesn't feel like that's the case now. I expect good things out of this team. I expect them to be better. I expect them to run the ball more effectively. I expect them to instill a little bit of that Kyle Shanahan running philosophy. I also expect this defense to improve under DeMeco Ryans.
Oh, absolutely. And Obviously, you got to. It's a new era complete. Like you get rid of, not get rid of. You move off of Davis Mills, which I don't I don't mind, but you have to see it coming. Because in my opinion, Davis Mills isn't that bad of a quarterback as folks are making.
No, he's not as good as Izzy thought he was, but he's certainly not a bad quarterback. You could win some games with Davis Mills if the defense was any good at all the last couple seasons.
And I don't know if this means much, but like you can do worse than Davis Mills.
That's true.
That you got a beast of a running back and
Damian Pierce, and
Damian Pierce. Like you
they also
found
added Devin. They also added Devin Singletary, who I really like,
like
coming from Buffalo.
so like you found a steal. Like you found a gem in Damian Pierce. Where do you go to? What is it, Cincinnati?
I think so. Let me look at that real quick. I got their depth chart pulled up right here. Excellent. I don't think it was Cincinnati, Florida. He went to the University of Florida.
Florida. What am I thinking of? That went to Cincinnati. I'm thinking of I think what's his name from Washington, but it's not important. So yeah, CJ Stroud, you come in and AFC South is as a whole, the entire division is basically teams in a rebuild, right?
Yeah, I mean, outside of the
Jacksonville,
Jacksonville, I think they're coming out of a rebuild, but they're still probably rebuilding. That kind of brings us into the next question. So this team spent one season in the cellar. Do you think they can get out of the cellar of the AFC South this season? Like, do you think this team will be good enough to make it out of the cellar? When we're talking about them in the future, are they going to be the last team in the AFC South next year?
well, for what would you say, 5 years or so, the AFC South has pretty much been the Tennessee Titans division to lose with
Yeah,
a sprinkle
I,
of with a
sprinkle of the
sprinkle
Colts, like
of
the
Colts.
Jaguars here and there. But yeah, it's been the Tennessee Titans season to lose. They seem to be in a for
Right.
sure transition phase. Um, I think that they can. I think they're a better team than Indianapolis potentially. Also, I think the motivation to win for this Houston Texans team is going to be really high because they're going to be giving up their own first round pick to the Arizona Cardinals. So you can't afford to lose games just for the sake of losing games because you don't have control over your own draft capital. This is a Houston Texans team that needs to is going to be motivated to win games. I think they're going to be motivated to play well, good football, and I think they'll be better than the Titans this season. I think they'll be better than the Indianapolis Colts. I think they do make it out of the cellar of the AFC South.
I think they'll be not this like not this season though, right? Like you talking about like
No,
in the
I'm talking about that this season,
well, until I don't because we don't know what the plan is at quarterback for the Titans. I think this is
or the Colts.
or the Colts. Like this is definitely the Jags. This is definitely like the Jags division to lose
I mean, it might not even take much. Like we're talking 5 wins might be what might win you the third place in the AFC South or second place in the AFC South.
because
Six wins.
the Jags were a wild card team with how many wins? Eight,
No, the Jags won the division with 9 wins.
nine. So
Yeah,
9 or 7. Okay, so 7 wins, you're in the conversation. Six might also keep you in the. I think like anything less than 6 wins, you're cooked.
yeah. I think the Houston Texans could legit win 6 games this season, and I don't expect much out of the Colts and the Titans. I think the Colts are knee deep in a rebuild. I think the Titans have no idea what they're doing. So we'll obviously talk. We'll also talk about them in a future episode. But I think Houston has a real opportunity to get out of the basement of the AFC South, and they're going to be motivated to do so because they can't. If they lose a top 5 draft pick, that's going to be pretty devastating. Final storyline, one area of concern heading into the season, as I had a hard time coming up with a third storyline that I thought wasn't like draft or free agency related. Let's just talk about one area of concern before we get into their draft.
It's still the quarterback play, right? Like you already know how I feel. Like going from one young quarterback to another young quarterback doesn't magically fix your problems, right? Even the Jags, they took Trevor Lawrence first overall. They had the number one overall pick the following year,
Yeah.
right? Like that doesn't so CJ Stroud, you got your work cut out for you. So you got the pressure of being a young quarterback in the league. You got the pressure of being a young black quarterback in the league, and you got the pressure of being a Ohio State quarterback in the league. Let the history show, Ohio State quarterbacks haven't done well at the next level. Like we're hoping our own former Buckeye turns it around here, and that's why they went out and traded for a DJ Moore, traded for a Chase Claypool. And if you're Houston, if you think he's the guy, if he goes through a stretch, CJ Stroud, if he goes through a stretch where it just looks awful, it looks rough. He has a rough couple games. You cannot talk about, hey, we need to get off him. We need to go get Caleb Williams or Drake May in next year's draft. You cannot do that.
Not to mention they don't have their own first round pick, so they that opportunity is not going to be a thing. But I guess my number one concern is actually at the wide receiver position. Number one, number two wide receivers going into this season: Robert Williams and Nico Collins. Hopefully, John Mechie can get healthy because he is really good and was really good in college. Hopefully, he's over his cancer diagnosis. He's going to be allowed to play this season in the NFL. All reports are that he's doing well. So let's keep that positive energy for him. But if you bring in a young quarterback, you want to have some established weapons for him to throw to. And the only one that they have right now is Bobby Schultz's cousin, Dalton Schultz. And he's only under contract for one season, which means he'll probably get traded at some point this year because teams are going to need a talented tight end like Bobby Schultz's cousin, Dalton Schultz. But the rest of these guys are complete unknowns. And I will say, though, I think on the left side of their offensive line, they should have a pretty solid unit. Kenyon Green and Laramie Tunsil, that's a pretty solid 1-2. But this wide receiving core gives me some pause for sure.
That's fair. You got rookie Tank Dell. You got from Houston, so he's like literally up the street. You got another rookie wide receiver from Iowa State, Xavier Hutchinson.
Noah Brown came over from the Cowboys in free agency. Steve Sims has bounced around the league. He was most recently on the Commanders. Mario Rodgers has been a bust ever since the Packers drafted him. I'm concerned about this wide receiver core. It's the same concern you have when you saw Justin Fields year one. I hate to always compare everything back to Justin Fields, but when he hit no weapons on the outside, he struggled. So
you have the best part of the best friend for young quarterbacks is what? The running game. If you look at the Houston Texans and the Chicago Bears, the one thing they could do very well was what? Run the ball.
And they should be able to run the ball this season. Damon Pierce, Devin Singletary, Mike Boone, Dare Ogunbowale, all four of those are good running backs. I don't think all four make the roster, but they're all solid running backs. Moving on from storylines, let's talk about their draft. Obviously, took CJ Stroud with the second pick, and then they traded up and back into the first five with Arizona to take Will Anderson Jr. I love that mindset for the Houston Texans. Like, hey, we just got this defensive-minded coach. Will Anderson is the guy we want. The hell with picking next year. We're not worried about it. Let's get the best player, arguably the best player in this year's draft. And we'll worry about it later. Juice Scruggs, center out of Penn State. Tank Dell, wide receiver out of Houston. Dylan Horton is an edge out of TCU. Henry, was it Toto Atu, linebacker out of Alabama. Did I get that?
Yeah.
Toto Atu? Oh, good for me. Jared Patterson, another center out of Notre Dame. Xavier Hudson, wide receiver out of Ohio State. And Brendan Hill, safety out of Pittsburgh. But I think it really boils down to the first two picks. What did you think about the strategy for Houston to trade up back into the top five to take Will Anderson and to sacrifice that future draft capital?
It's aggressive, and I loved it. Like, it's basically saying this, like, hey man, we can only be in the rebuild for so long.
Yeah.
Like we can only be like direction for so long. Like, we gotta have a plan, we gotta stick to the plan, and we gotta have the foundation to see this plan come to fruition. So you're hoping CJ Stroud is your quarterback for the next decade. You got your edge presence and Will Anderson Jr. for the next decade. So obviously, like with DeMeco Ryans, your defense is probably going to be not a not at the forefront because of how the game is played today, obviously. But your defense is definitely going to be more of a focal point. So like you get Will Anderson. So like next year you don't have your own first round pick. You set that.
They still have Cleveland's first round pick in the Deshaun Watson trade, so they will have a first round pick in next year's draft regardless.
So you're probably going to get more linebacker help, more edge help, more DB help, something.
And they addressed a lot of that in free agency. When we get to the next graphic, I didn't have enough lines on the sheet to put all of the people they signed in free agency at the defensive side of the ball. But
Like
yeah, I mean,
the Henry Totu pick, like the game that sticks out to me for him was the Penn State game. Like he single handedly took that game over. Like it was a back and forth game, and then all of a sudden he's just like, nope, pick six. And this is from the linebacker spot, by the way. He sacked, strip fumble, pick six, which both got taken back to the house. And it was like, all right, what was once a competitive game is now a 21-point game because they just said enough's enough.
yeah, 205 tackles while spending 2 seasons at Alabama, 15.5 sacks for loss, tackles for loss, and 6.5 sacks in 2 seasons at Alabama. Adds immediate linebacker depth. As for Scruggs, so he's a 2-year starter at Penn State. He can play center or guard. He gives you some versatility. They did have to trade back into the second round in order to get him, but he's probably going to be their starting center. As Scott Quisenberry was the incumbent, had a block win rate of only 86.8, which ranked 40th among all active centers last season. Not what you're looking for. So this is probably going to be a guy who's going to be an immediate number one starter. Tank Dell is a flyer. You basically replaced Brandon Cooks with Tank Dell, who's 5'8", 165 pounds, but explosive, really lightning fast.
And I think he's put on like 20 pounds of muscle since then. So he's no longer 165. He's like 185, 190 now. Like he is nice. Now.
Dylan Horton, another edge rusher out of TCU, had 10.5 sacks, 15 tackles for loss, 4 pass deflections, and a forced fumble in that historic TCU 2022 football season. Gives you depth at the defensive end position, especially with Sheldon Rankins, Malik Collins, and Jerry Hughes all getting up there in age. I don't know enough about the rest of their picks to really even talk all that intelligently about them. Xavier Hutchinson is a 6'3" wide receiver, gives you some size, which they don't really have there. Jared Patterson is a center from Notre Dame. He didn't allow a sack as a 3-year starter in college. Not one. So, at Notre Dame, so.
I'll take that back. That wasn't 2-0 again, Penn State. That was Ohio State. I take that back. Because I'm like, yeah. Wrong.
And Brandon Hill is a safety. He ran a 4.43 in the 40-yard dash. Probably will be productive in special teams or in kickoffs. So,
yep.
I think as a whole, I love the aggressiveness of this draft for the Houston Texans. If Will Anderson's the guy you want, as the Los Angeles Rams like to say, F them picks. Let's build now. We're going to have to get out of this basement that is the AFC South. I love the aggression there. This is a solid B+ draft for me.
Oh, absolutely. And obviously, like because of the state of your franchise, there's no reason why all these guys shouldn't stay on the team in some capacity. Like there's no like you said, like especially special teams. Like there's no reason for a guy like Xavier Hutchinson and Brandon Hill, who were late round picks, to not stay on this team in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah. Moving into free agency. Hold on a second.
Go ahead.
To free agency, notable additions. Obviously, they got Robert Woods from the Tennessee Titans. Jimmy Ward came over from San Francisco. Sheldon Rankins, Bobby Schultz's cousin Dalton Schultz. Shaquille Griffin came over from the Jacksonville Jaguars after he was cut. Devin Singletary comes from Buffalo. Their main departures. I'm not going to try to say that name. Okoroko, I think is how you pronounce the last name. And then Brandon Cooks obviously got traded to the Dallas Cowboys. I do not remember what the draft capital in return for that trade was, but he was a wide receiver that was pretty unhappy there for at least the last season and a half. So he gets to go to Dallas, and they But they also signed a bunch of other players that I couldn't necessarily fit on the graphic here. Andrew Beck is another fullback. Case Keenum, a steady hand at the wide quarterback position. Hassan Ridgeway, defensive tackle from, you guessed it, San Francisco. Mike Boone, Denzel Perriman, Las Vegas Raiders, goes to the Houston Texans. I think he also spent some time in San Francisco. Noah Brown, Jake Martin, Corey Littleton, another guy who used to play for the Las Vegas Raiders. Chase Winovich was part of the New England Patriots, I think, at one point. Yeah, Steve Spinn Jr., who was on the Pittsburgh Steelers last season, but has spent some time in the Commanders. But yeah, they've done a good. Eric Tomlinson, tight end, was on the Denver Broncos, now Houston Texan. And they didn't lose anybody that was really noteworthy. I mean, Rex Burkhead is still on sign. Mario Addison, Justin Britt, Royce Freeman, who played in the XFL this past season, right? No, maybe not. Maybe Royce Freeman. I thought he played in the XFL at some point. But yeah, so looking at their free agency class, I think the notable there is Dalton Schultz, really good tight end. Too bad they couldn't sign him to more than a 1-year deal. I don't really get that decision, but
no, you thinking of Lindsay, who was in the XFL?
Yeah, probably. But yeah, noticeable defensive side where they brought in these free agents. They would have onus on the defensive side of the football. What do we think about their free agency?
And Brandon Cooks was traded for a 5th. And this past draft and the 6th in next year's draft.
Does that have conditions on it? I bet it has conditions on it.
I doubt it.
Yeah.
What kind of conditions does Brandon Cooks?
I mean, if he ends up going to the Super Bowl, does it become like a 3rd-round pick? He ends up going over 1,000 yards. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I doubt it. I doubt.
I doubt it too. So it's all good.
But obviously, like a bunch of the guys that you brought in, they are probably day one starters. Robert Woods, Jimmy Ward, Dalton Schultz, Devin Singletary. Like, these are guys that you're come in right away, show the young dudes what to do. Especially Jimmy Ward.
I mean, same thing on the defensive side. I mean, Shaquille Griffin should start day one. Jimmy Ward, Denzel Perriman, Sheldon Rankins, all those guys are going to be day one starters.
Yeah, I don't see why they shouldn't. Like, there's no reason. There was no one on this roster ahead of them that should be taking their spots. Like, I'm not being disrespectful, but it's like who at the safety spot is better than Jimmy Ward that's currently on the roster? But there was.
And the other thing is they signed most of these guys to 1 or 2 year deals, so you're not married to any of these players. So if it doesn't work out after one season, you easily cut them and cut your losses and move on. So I think when you talk about free agency, we talk about the Houston Texans. I think they did probably the best they could here because nobody's going to go to Houston. Like, they're not teams clamoring to go to Houston because they're not. For one, probably not going to win that many games this season. 2, it's a front office and a franchise that notably has been cheap and isn't reflected highly in the National Football League. Like, players aren't clamoring to go to Houston.
No, the McNair family is.
Yeah, they might be the most they might be the poorest now that Daniel Snyder's out of the NFL, and he may be the lowest rated owner in the NFL.
And it's literally like, on top of the team being bad, it's his personal.
Yeah.
Like,
yep. Yeah.
I don't want to say beliefs, but his personal actions, like how he handles himself, it's just. Yeah, it's pretty bad.
Was it Jerry Richardson, right? The Richardson family is the one that owns it.
Oh, the Texans.
Yeah.
No, the McNairs.
Oh yeah, Richardson was the team that used to own the Panthers, right?
Panther, and he sold them. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll see. But yeah, I think as a whole, I like getting Jimmy Ward. I like getting the pieces on defensive side. I think this is a solid B- free agency class.
You said B-?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love the Dalton Schultz signing. I just think he's going to be a difference maker, and he's one of those guys you need for a young quarterback. He's kind of that escape hatch, and I also think Dallas is really kicking themselves for losing him because him and Dak Prescott had a really nice rapport that I don't necessarily think they're going to be able to get back with the guy they drafted. but that's a conversation for a whole nother time. Moving over free agents, let's talk about their schedule, as it is a doozy. Um, Although I think they have the easiest schedule in the NFL, one of them at least, because of the division that they play in. But let's talk about their schedule. Let's talk about their first game. They go to Baltimore into M&T Bank Stadium and face off against Lamar Jackson, his freshly minted, was a $251 million contract, making him the highest paid quarterback in the National Football League in terms of full amount of money. They go to Baltimore and they lose.
Yeah, they go. Yeah, like C.J. Stroud, your introduction to the NFL is watching a former MVP, go to work with with new toys and with new toys in its own, with of its own.
Yeah, with OBJ and Zay Flowers. It's going to be a bad time. The next week, the Indianapolis Colts come to town. Battle of the second and fourth overall picks. As we got potentially, we got Richardson versus C.J. Stroud. But I actually think the Houston Texans get the victory here. I think they beat the Indianapolis Colts. I don't think the Colts are going to be that good. I don't think they're going to be motivated that much to win that many games anyways. So give me the Texans at 1-1.
I don't think we're going to get Stroud versus Richardson in week 2. I don't.
What do you think it's going to be, Minshew Mania?
Yeah, I don't think it matters. All right, the only way I see the Colts winning this game is if Jonathan Taylor just goes apeshit. Like, he just runs all over them. They can't stop him, and yeah, that's the only way I can see them winning this game. But I think I got the Houston. Yeah, 1-1.
Totally agree with you there. And then they go to Jacksonville, and I think that's where the good vibes end. I think Jacksonville beats them. They're just a better football team. They fall to 1-2.
Yeah, Trevor Lawrence gets his new toy with Calvin Ridley. It's just like the Jags are going to be they might make it to the AFC Championship again. Like that.
I don't necessarily disagree with that call right there. Moving on from there, let's talk about they go welcome in the Pittsburgh Steelers and Kenny Pickett into their house. I think that the Pittsburgh Steelers and Mike Tomlin, I think they continue to win. I think they continue to be productive. I think they beat the Houston Texans. I got them at 1-3.
So this is year 2 under Kenny Pickett. He should be better, right? Allen Robinson adds his name to the mix. He's trying to, reinvent himself. Yeah, I think Mike Tomlin comes up with a better game plan. He outcoaches DeMeco Ryans, and we got him at 1-3.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then they go to back-to-back games against the NFC South. They go to Atlanta, take on the Falcons, and then the New Orleans Saints come there to take on the Houston Texans, obviously. What do you see before their bye? How do you see Houston checking out these 2 games against NFC South opponents back-to-back? One game on the home, one game on the road.
They split. I think they beat the Falcons, and I think they lose to the Saints.
I'll disagree with you. I think they lose to the Atlanta Falcons. I think they beat the New Orleans Saints. In all honesty, they may lose both these games. Actually, I'm going to go with that. They're going to lose them both. I got them at 1-5 going into their bye.
2-4.
After their bye, they go to the Carolina Panthers, and which should be the matchup between Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud. I actually think that C.J. Stroud is going to get the advantage here over the Carolina Panthers. Give me C.J. Stroud and the Houston Texans to get off the schneid and win that game. Go to 2-5.
The the dreaded 1 versus 2 matchup, right?
Yeah.
They schedule these every year, and it's rarely a good game.
Well, it's usually if you're 1-2, you're the worst 2 teams in the NFL. Like putting a young quarterback on teams that are terrible usually isn't a recipe for success.
But what do you do when both teams are terrible?
I don't. But I think Houston. I think they made more improvements on the fringes of that roster as opposed to Carolina.
Think so?
I mean, it's close.
I also don't think the Panthers are done being settled. I don't expect Brian Burns to finish.
I do.
You think he's gonna finish the season with the Panthers? You don't see
Yeah.
him being.
I mean, yeah, I do actually this season at least. I think Carolina's defense has a chance to be really good next season, but
Give me the. Damn, this is at Carolina. Give me the Panthers in a walk-off win.
so we go, but got them at 2-5 going, and then they welcome in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers into their house, and I think they get their third win of the season. I think they beat Tampa Bay. I have no idea what to expect from the Buccaneers this season.
Yeah, there's no reason. The only way I see them winning this game is if you catch Baker Mayfield on this, like he's just having a bad day. Like there's no reason why, even with Baker Mayfield at quarterback, there's no reason why they should be able to stop Mike Evans, stop Chris Godwin on the outside. And they still got what's his name at tight end? Cameron Brate? No, he's not.
No, he retired.
Oh yeah, the concussions. That's right. He just
see
called that one. Just one too many. And
I disagree with you. I think Tampa Bay is going to be a mess this season. So
no, they're not going to be a mess this game. Hey, Vita Vea might legit live in that backfield, and like CJ Stroud is going to give him a big dose of Vita Vea.
From that game, they go to Cincinnati. Yeah, they lose that one. Let's just move on. Then the Arizona Cardinals in their rebuild come to town. I have them beating Arizona. I have them now at 4 and what is that? 4 and 6. Because I think they beat Arizona in Houston.
Yeah, they should beat Arizona. Like, what week is this? Kyler Murray is probably still. If Kyler Murray is probably still not back at this point, if he is. He's probably just getting back.
They're not playing him this season. I'm telling you.
That I don't think they have a say in that matter. Like you max the guy out. I understand he's a franchise, but if he's good to go, he's good to go. He's gonna play.
I got them at 4 and 6. Yeah, they lose to the Arizona Cardinals. I think they lose. They beat the Arizona Cardinals. I think they lose their next 3 games in a row. I think they lose to the Jacksonville Jaguars. They lose to Denver, and they lose to the Jets in New York in MetLife Stadium. I got them falling all the way down now to 4 and 9 into the downward stretch of their season. Do you disagree with any of those picks?
Yeah, Jacksonville should sweep them. Denver should beat them. Everybody's talking about Russell Wilson's revenge season. I'll believe it when I see it. Yeah, the Jets should win this one. The Jets should win this game full halftime.
It's true. I mean, we'll talk about the Jets in a future episode. But from there, let's talk about they have 3 out of the last 4 games are against division rivals. They go to Tennessee, and I actually think they get another victory against the Tennessee Titans in this game, or they will get 2 wins against Tennessee this season. I have them winning both of those games, moving them up to 6 and 9. Actually, no, I disagree. I'm going to disagree with that. I'll have them just lose. They're losing. Of the last 4 games on their schedule, they're only going to win 1 of those. That's the game they're going to where Tennessee comes to town. They lose all other 3. They lose at Tennessee. The Cleveland Browns come and beat them, and they lose to the Colts in the house that Peyton Manning built. I have them finishing the season 5 and 12.
Yeah, 5 and 12. 5 and 12, 6 and 11. I mean, like 7 and 10 should be your goal, but
yeah. I mean, a couple things could shake out a couple different ways, but that's still a 2-game improvement over the last season, and probably good enough to get you out of the cellar of the AFC South. Depending on what the Colts and the Titans do, we'll talk about them in future episodes. But yeah, I mean, 5 and 12, 6 and 11, 4 and 13. That's what we're talking about here when we talk about the Houston Texans for this season.
Yeah, I give them anywhere between 5 and 7 wins. Like anything could happen, you know.
Yeah, I mean they could sweep Tennessee. We still don't know what Tennessee's even doing right now. It's like they drafted 2 quarterbacks in the 3rd round in back-to-back years. They still have Ryan Tannehill on the roster, yet they still have Derrick Henry on the roster. So it's not really clear what they're doing with their roster, even though the rest of the roster around it isn't all that good. So we'll see. But yeah, thank you for checking out our Houston Texans season preview. We thank you very much for everybody who checked us out here. Also, the teams, anybody checked out our Denver Nuggets final celebration show, kudos to them. Thank you very much for checking us out. We're going to be doing NBA offseason stuff tomorrow, so you don't want to miss that episode of the crossover. I'm David Huppman. Right there is Mr. TJ Hopkins. Please like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. And also check us out on our plethora of streaming platforms. The link is in the chat on all of our major platforms. TJ, what we do here at the Prime, my friend?
We bring the heat.
That's right, we do. We bring the heat. And we'll see you guys all tomorrow. You all stay safe out there. I'm about to eat some dinner. I have not eaten today. So,
Yeah,
see you
you
later,
do that.
buddy.